Greetings everyone, welcome to your weekly glass demo. For this video I'm going to be showing how to construct one of these oval dishes using some different glass painting techniques. This is part one of two, and let's get started with checking out which supplies I used for this project. Alright, so before I start cutting any glass at all, I want to pick out my mold. And this mold that I've chosen, it doesn't sit flat, which is okay because we're going to do a little trick later to fix that hopefully. But first I want to take my mold and I want to trace it onto my kiln paper so I have a template for where I'm going to build. Remember, we always need kiln paper when we're fusing, and you can build on top of your pieces of cardboard. Everybody's going to get 2 pieces of cardboard assigned to them, and that's always going to be the same cardboard that we put back on your shelf. It's good to have an X-Acto knife on hand. Usually we have one available, but that's one of the tools that you will need to get for your own supply. Remember to cut those corners off because those corners can blush onto your project in the kiln and cause a mark later. So I really didn't want to cut a bunch of pieces for my base, and I didn't mind being a little off with this one, so I just positioned my glass to cover most possible area of my design, because I know that in my second layer I'm going to be adding some glass to it and it'll overlap and make up the difference for those little corners that I'm losing. I'm just using my hand cutting techniques here for this part, and these are all very easy curves and they'll break out just fine. And then I'm going to save my larger clear pieces because I'm going to incorporate that into my second layer. So for this design, my second layer is going to be made out of strips. If you need a refresher on how to use the strip cutter, check out our cutting demo video, which goes over all of our tools, and it should be titled "You've Got to Cut It." But go ahead and make a bunch of strips of a couple colors. I chose an orange and a blue, and I'm going to intersperse them with some clear. They're all cut to a little over 1/4 of an inch, not quite 1/2 an inch. But I'm just spreading them out and I'm creating a little bit of a design with them. And after I've laid them out, I'll just cut them to size and then find out how they all fit together. So this is a good part that you can do in class, is getting all your strips prepared. And that can and then you can save a lot of the painting and sticking stickers for if you want to complete some of that at home. But once I've got my layout, I'm actually going to transfer this to another piece of paper, and I'm going to go in order. Like you can see, I drew my mold shape again, so all the pieces would go back to where I wanted them to be, because now I'm going to be painting in between my glass layers. But I wanted to lay out my strips first so I wouldn't be messing up any of my painting that I'm doing in between the layers. So for the painting, I did a couple different techniques. I tried out some of the big mouth paints and some of our easy fire enamels. The big mouth paints you don't have to mix with anything, but the easy fire enamels you'll need the silkscreen medium to make them mobile. Using water makes them really chalky and doesn't work as well. But for the trees there, I just added my big mouth paint to a stamp that I had a roller, and I used a little ponce to apply the paint, and then I just rolled it on over. And if you mess up, you can erase it and try again, or if there's just some little specks somewhere that you don't like, once it's dry, it's easy to use a needle tool or a toothpick to just scrape it off. Now I've prepped my Easy Fire enamel, and I am adding some of these decal stickers that are going to make a resist and leave their stencil silhouette after I've added my paint. And I'm using a little sponge dauber just in my Easy Fire enamel, and I'm just going to sponge all over my glass. Next I'm going to use this Colors for Earth glass paint. Unlike the Easy Fire enamels, these do need to be capped with glass, otherwise they do not go glossy. They're more of a chalky paint. But I've filled up a little squeeze bottle with a fine tip that I got with the Colors for Earth, and I'm just squeezing out some designs. You can get these squeeze bottles on Amazon. They are very, very cheap. You can get a whole set with all sorts of different tips for like less than $10. And they're very useful for many things. But I'm just going to add all my little designs. I'm a little wobbly in my first attempt, but I don't mind. It's kind of, I'm trying to get more of a wavy situation going here, so I don't mind the little ripples. But if you're trying to get more of a straight line, practice always helps. And you can practice on a little tile next to you or a piece of glass that you're not using. Try out your design first. Alright, make sure to let all your paints dry really, really well. You can use a heat gun or hair dryer to speed up this process. Just make sure you're not focusing the heat in one spot of the glass for an extended period of time. This can cause thermal shock if you've got one side of your glass that's cooler than the other. If you need to use the heat gun in class, you can borrow ours. You just need to wear gloves while using it. Sorry about the fuzziness of this part. I did not have the camera in focus, my bad. But everything's dry underneath. I've removed my stickers, and now I am reassembling that second layer of strips that I started with at the beginning. And I'm just adding a little dab of glue and sticking each one down. After firing, I noticed that I did see little dots of I could see where my glue was because it just kind of dispersed the paint a little bit. It doesn't look too bad, but if you really don't want that to happen, I would recommend tack fusing your first layer to get all the paints to set in place before adding your second layer. But I went ahead and just glued down all my strips. You might notice there's a second color of stamped trees on my first layer there with the copper. I used the copper Easy Fire enamel, but it ended up really fading quite a bit after firing. So I wouldn't recommend using that one with the wheel type stamp that I used. I don't think it deposits enough material for it to really show up in a full fuse firing. And then I've got lots of gaps in between all these strips, and I want to make sure that everything fuses together and I don't have any little pock holes where the paint's kind of leached through, because I've got that Colors for Earth paint, which does not become glass-like. It is like a little chalk. So I sifted a layer of clear powdered frit over everything. It doesn't have to be super thick. I just made it so it filled in all the cracks and was about the same height as the rest of the glass. I'll have one sifter available for student use in the classroom. You just need to wear gloves while using it. If you want your own set of sifters, they have them online. AE Glass, Glass Crafters have some, and and as well as Amazon. You can also just use one of those little tea bag holders that is like a mini strainer. Those work just as well if you've got one that's collecting dust somewhere at home. So I usually use my thumb to just make the little sifter vibrate and give out an even layer of frit. And you notice I put it on little risers. So now once I've finished sifting all my frit, I can just tap on the edges and get rid of the excess frit, and it'll just fall on my newspaper I've laid out, and I can save that excess for another project. I also haven't glued down my base just yet. As soon as I remove it from here, I'll glue it onto my kiln paper and then mark it for full fuse. Alright, that is all for this demo. In the next video, I will show you how I made a false foot for my mold and troubleshoot some design areas that I wasn't really happy with after the first firing. I'll see you in the studio. Um, it wasn't uh, it wasn't horrible. It doesn't look terrible.